On the bench today, I have an Atari Jaguar, and I've been really eager to finally find some time to start working on this project. This is one of those eBay listings where you're not entirely sure what you're going to get because the system was advertised as non-working. It had a single line in the description that said Atari Jaguar with 5 games without mentioning what those 5 games were. The listing had one grainy photo to go off of, and the seller feedback was in the single digits. And to top all of that off, I reached out to the seller and asked him what was wrong with the system, to which I got no response. So I don't know if I would have normally bid on a system like this, but quite frankly, my curiosity got the better of me. I knew that I'd be making this video, and once we look at what's inside, it might become a little bit more apparent why I paid as much as I did for this system. All right. Beautiful packing job. Let's just put these aside for a moment. 5 games. 7 games? I thought it was 5 games. Maybe it's 7. We have a nice used undershirt. Definitely something I can rinse out and add to my closet. The awkward Atari Jaguar controllers, there's 2 of them. Aftermarket power supply, and the system itself. Despite the horrendous packing job, the system has survived chipping. There are no cracks in the shell. And I'm not quite sure how this person was even able to test the system out if an AV cable isn't included, unless they just used a generic RF cable, because it has a proprietary AV connector. Let's take a closer look at the games. I don't know why I thought they were 5. Apparently there's 7. I'll have to take a closer look at the listing. So at least one of these games is quite collectible, and that's this guy right here, Towers 2. I don't know anything about this game, but it's apparently consistently selling for around $200 used on eBay. So if I get the system working and I can verify that this works, I absolutely plan to resell this. I don't give a damn about this game, and that's going to take $200 off the price that I paid for the rest of this bundle. So this is primarily what gave me the confidence to bid on this listing and still feel like that I would get the value out of whatever eventually showed up. Now, the power supply that he included, 9 volts, 1.5 amps, so that actually should be plenty to run the system, but it's center positive. Center positive. I can already see that we have a problem here, and that's that this power supply is center positive. And that is not the right power supply to run the system. This system runs on center negative, like the Genesis Model 1, the Master System, the Sega CD, the Neo Geo. So unless this power supply has been modified, which it doesn't look like it has, this is the wrong power supply to run the system. I'm not even going to plug this into the system. I'm going to grab one of my Neo Geo power supplies and we'll test it out, but I will plug this in just to measure it and just verify that it hasn't been modified to work with the system. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, that's plugged in. So black in the center, red on the outside, and we're getting -9 rather than 9. This is indeed center positive. It has not been modified to work on the system. Let me go ahead and grab a Neo Geo power supply. You might remember that I picked up these high quality power supplies for all my Neo Geos, and they are all 9 volts center negative, and they're rated for 3.5 amps, and all we need for the Jaguar is 1 amp. So this is going to be plenty to run the system. Let's plug this guy in. So black in the center, red on the outside, and this is center negative 9 volts. I'm actually really optimistic that this is going to work, but you never know. I'm just going to plug this into the Neo Geo power supply and see if I get a green LED, and then we can figure out the audio video situation. Nothing. Yep, we're definitely getting 9 volts. Center negative. And this thing is not powering on. It is very possible that that incorrect power supply has done something to damage the power circuitry inside the console, so I guess that's going to be our first order of business. Looks like we have 4 screws on the back. It looks like the top shield is free. Just need to pry it away from the bottom case. Yep, there we go. All right. So next we have to bend all these pegs back to free the top shield. There we go. All right. We are in. I really don't think anyone's been in here before. The board looks very, very clean. So we have a few more screws we need to take out. I believe that's it. All right. So I think first thing to do is do some voltage checks and see where we lose power on the board. We should be seeing 9 volts at the input, which we are. So all these adjacent components are getting 9 volts, so power is traveling through the board. So we've verified power is reaching this capacitor right here. Great. And then it travels down this trace all the way down here. Right here. We still have 9 volts. Now where does it go after there? So does it travel through this resistor? Yes. Then it goes to this chip right here. Okay. Where else is it going? So this is about as far as I can trace the voltage. I have the 9 volts going in, out the other side of the resistor, and then it feeds this little IC right here. And I have 9 volts on the other side, but then I don't have anything on these adjacent components. So nothing going through this diode, nothing through this inductor. These definitely look like power related components. It's a pretty big diode, massive inductor. There should be some voltage going across them. So I'm going to do a little bit more research, maybe try and find some schematics just to understand this part of the circuit board a little bit better to see why we lose power going into these components. All right, guys, I got the system working, and I'm not even going to try and fake my reaction on camera. This might have been glaringly obvious to some of you that owned the system, but it wasn't to me, and you cannot power the system on without a cartridge inserted. If we insert a cartridge into the system, and I still have the Neo Geo power supply plugged in, and the system powers on. How amazing is that? It was the power supply all along, and I'm so glad I figured that out an hour into this project. I was getting ready to go down a deep rabbit hole. In case someone out there is running into a similar issue, I'll also just share quickly the 2 findings I found about the regulator. There's basically two regulators you need to check. And the first one is actually the one that I was kind of fumbling with. On this guy right here, bottom left pin, just make sure that you're getting 9 volts on this output. If you're getting 9 volts here, the regulator is good. Now, there's also a 5-volt regulator that can go faulty if the wrong power supply is used, and that's this little chip right here labeled REG1. If you measure the voltage on this pin right here, it should measure 9 volts, that's the input, and if you measure voltage on this pin right here, it should measure 5 volts, that's the output. So to test the 5-volt regulator, system needs to be turned on. I'm not getting a light because I don't have a game plugged in, but if I probe the top left pin here, I should get 9 volts on the input. There's 9 volts. And if I probe the bottom left right here, I should get 5 volts on the output. And I'm getting a steady 5 volts. If you're not getting those voltages, then you might have to replace one or both of those chips, which may have just blown or gone bad if someone used the wrong power supply on the board. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just eager to test everything else out, make sure we're getting video, make sure the controllers and the games work. So I'm just going to rummage through the accessories that I have and try and find an RF cable just to temporarily get an image on the screen and verify that everything works. And in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and place an order for some third-party connectors so that we can hook it up to composite. Let me go ahead and do that and we'll take it from there. I didn't have to look too hard. This is the RF switch that came with the Sega Master System that we repaired in the last video. So it's just coax on one side and an RCA style connector on the other. I've actually never hooked up a console over RF to this TV. Power cable. Just plug in the controller. And I kind of want to christen the system with Pitfall for some good karma, just given how much I played that game on the 2600. It's not great news. The red screen of death. I read a little bit about this online. It could just mean a dirty cartridge port. All right. Let's try a different game. Ski and snowboarding. Let's try channel 4. Yeah, channel 4 is no better. Okay. Let's try some contact cleaner. Let's try it now. Black screen this time. And it's working. It's just a dirty cartridge port. All right. Oh man. Yeah, the controls are definitely working fine. Okay. All right, guys. I think let me cycle through the rest of these cartridges and see if I can get them all working. The pattern that I'm finding is that all these games are working, if not directly from the first time, after a quick spray of contact cleaner and just wiping down the contacts. Now this game right here, this is going to make or break the sale for me. Red screen. Just give it a little wipe down. And looks like it works. Towers 2, Plight of the Stargazer. Some collector is going to enjoy this a hell of a lot more than I am. Alright guys, I'm pretty satisfied that there is absolutely nothing wrong with this console. I'm just going to take it down to the garage, dust it off with the air compressor, and then we'll put it back together. It's actually been about a week since I paused on this restoration to knock out a few projects in the garage, and in that time, I've completely cleaned the system out. So I've washed the case, dusted the motherboard, and cleaned all the cartridges with contact cleaner, and the AV cable that I bought on eBay arrived. So we'll get a chance to try this thing out with some better video than when we were testing it with RF. All right, so let's go ahead and start putting this back together and slide the motherboard in. Bottom case, and then that goes right in. We had a couple of screws on either side of the cartridge port and 2 screws at the bottom. So now the top shield. I think they're all lined up except this one corner peg. There it is. Now I think I'm just going to fold these in with my fingers. All right, and last but not least, the top case. Now this is probably overkill for the button, but I like using lithium grease anytime there are plastic parts touching each other. Just a few dabs of lithium grease. All right. Super clean. All that dust is gone. All right, nothing left to do but hook this guy up. Where's the cable? I'm still using the Neo Geo power supply. All right, all the games. TV on. I'm not going to bore you guys with a full-on demo of all 7 games, but I'll speed through this footage. Let's at least see if we can get to the title screen with every one of these cartridges. Great, that's the first game. Fantastic. I'm actually pretty excited to play Pitfall Towers 2. Like I mentioned, I will be selling this game. Probably not right away. I do want to play it for a little bit and just see what all the fuss is about. Doom, baby. And last but not least, and that's all she wrote. Just trying to organize my thoughts to wrap this video up, and the 3 things that I want to talk about are the Atari Jaguar in general, the eBay listing for this console, and this specific repair. I wasn't aware of the system when I was younger. I probably knew more about the Neo Geo than I did about the Atari Jaguar, so I'm actually really thrilled to own a working one of these, and I'm so excited, guys. I mean, you have no idea how fired up I am to play on some of these games tonight. Now, in terms of the eBay listing, I will admit it was an odd listing. I've since gone back and taken a closer look, and not only did it not mention how many games were included, but the one photo that was there which only showed 6 of the cartridges, by the way, not 7, had so much glare that you could barely make out what some of these games were. So you still find stuff like that on eBay. I know sometimes eBay can feel like a bit of a shady place to do business, especially if you've had a bad experience and you've received an item that was misrepresented, but I've had a lot of good luck on eBay, and things like this are still out there to be found. Last but not least, in terms of my experience working on this project, I think my biggest takeaway would be don't skip the obvious stuff or the seemingly obvious stuff. I experienced that a couple of times in this project, both with the power supply and later with the red screen of death, both of which turned out to be very minor issues. System was bundled with the wrong power supply, and the cartridge port and games needed some contact cleaner to get them working again. Perhaps the final learning is doing a little bit of homework up front, and in my case, that was not realizing that the system will not power on without a cartridge inserted. I ended up figuring that out fairly quickly, but there are systems like that that just have their own quirks, and it pays to have done that homework up front before you actually dive in and try and diagnose what's wrong with the system. Could be a simple issue that's right underneath your nose the whole time. That's all for this video, guys. Thanks for coming along for the repair, and I will see you again soon. Take care.